Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Greenproofing series. I'm Dave Fortson, COO of Regen Network. Really excited to be here. And today we get to talk about cheetahs and rhinos and giraffes in Ohio and what that means to conservation, why it's important on a sustainability level. So with no further ado, I want to bring you right in to meet Danny Lough. He is the Director of Conservation Education and Engagement at the Wilds. Welcome, Danny. Can we start by why are you here, Danny? What inspired your sustainability journey as a professional in the space and landed you in this position of being able to wake up every day and seeing wild animals on 10,000 acres in Ohio?
Well, thanks, Dave, so much for having me on the show. So my background, I grew up in zoos down in Florida. So I grew up going to Zoo Tampa and the Florida Aquarium, and I was fortunate enough right out of high school to get a part-time job at Zoo Tampa, being an educator, talking to folks about the amazing conservation work that zoos do, but also, igniting that passion and that interest in conservation and resource conservation in school age children, especially. So absolutely love that. I then got the opportunity to work at the Florida Aquarium, where I brought out students from local fifth grade students from several Title I schools. And these are kids, Dave, that live just 30 minutes from the beach, and they had never been to the ocean before. So having them go around and collect little fiddler crabs and learn about mangroves was super cool. I then had the opportunity to go pursue a master's degree at Wake Forest University, where I did research down in Peru on tropical rainforest communities and trophic cascades. And then taught for several years at a private school, but wanted to really get back into the zoo field. And I was fortunate enough to see this opportunity come up for the Director of Conservation Education and Engagement at the Wilds. And the Columbus Zoo and the Wilds are such strong holds within conservation in the zoo field. So absolutely wanted to be a part of it. And I've been so very fortunate these past 2.5 years to be working with an amazing team here at the Wilds doing some awesome conservation work.
Great. Well, let's pick up on the wilds. Like I said, and reviewing for our interview today, being able to see, as somebody who'd went into the Ngorongoro crater in Tanzania, I got to see many of these animals that are in Ohio in the wild themselves. And it was just an absolutely mind-boggling experience. Still to this day, it gets me quite just fired up, emotional about, oh God, what a beautiful place that we live in that has the most incredible creatures walking this planet. And clearly the wilds has picked up on this theme, right? It seems to bring home to here in the United States, the wilds, literally the wilds into 10,000 acres in Ohio. And it seems to be driven by conservation from what I can tell. And so can you speak a little bit more about the thesis of change for the wilds, knowing that, some people are familiar with zoos, right? Many major metropolitan areas have a zoo, and, those can be met with a variety of emotions of playing an important role in elevating the animals around the world and giving them space, but also being concerned about them being in small enclosures and whatnot. The wild seems to have taken a different approach. Can you speak how the wilds functions and how it really stimulates and it plays an important role in facilitating conservation around the globe and here in the United States?
Absolutely, Dave. So the Wilds is a 10,000 acre conservation safari park. So we are a part of the Columbus Zoo family of parks. And within that, our combined mission is empowering people, saving wildlife. So connecting people to conservation issues that are facing wildlife both around the world, but also right here in Ohio. So within our 10,000 acres, we've only got about 2,500 actually developed for our large herds of African and Asian hoofstock and our carnivores like our cheetahs and painted dogs. The rest of the land is kind of a laboratory, if you would, for researchers and our ecology team to restore the land as much as possible back to what the land would have looked like for early settlers to Ohio. So that's a really cool opportunity in a space that's roughly the size of the island of Manhattan. So with our on-site programs, with our um, managed species. So we've got 24 species here at the Wilds that are main focus with conservation breeding programs within the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. So we've got giraffes, we have rhinos, we have scimitar horned oryx and Przewalski's wild horses, but then we also have some native wildlife as well. We have a great hellbender program. So with our hellbender program, we're a part of the Ohio Hellbender Council, but we also work very closely with West Virginia Department of Natural Resources. So our ecology team goes out to the rivers with West Virginia Department of Natural Resources. We collect eggs from rivers throughout West Virginia. Often some of them are impaired in some way that could prevent the population in the future from surviving successfully in that river at that time. So we bring the eggs back. Hellbenders are super slow growing. So it takes them about 5 to 6 years to fully reach the size that's about 10 to 12 inches, what we consider trout safe. And we can start to reintroduce them back into the rivers in West Virginia. So we do extensive surveying of those rivers prior, but if the habitat's good, if there's plenty of large rocks, there's crayfish for them to eat, they're going back into either their natal rivers or into rivers that they haven't been in over 50 years, which is a really great success. For our conservation breeding point, one of our biggest programs that we're known for within the Association of Zoos and Aquariums is our white rhino breeding program. We've had a very successful breeding program with our white rhinos. And often what we think contributes to that largely is our open spaces and large herds. So our white rhinos have free reign of over 200 acres. So they can decide if they want to wallow in the mud, if they want to go hang out in the shelter, if they just want to hang out with one another. And so our female white rhinos form this large crash of rhinos. And the younger rhinos, as they're growing up, they get to observe other females raising their young. They get to learn how to be better parents. And we think that has a lot to do with the success. So we have multiple generations in one rhino herd at one time, which is really cool. Another big success that we've had is with our large herds, there's more choice. So the animals can act like they do in Africa, in Nepal. They have opportunities to go into forested sections, to go into rivers and lakes here at the Wilds, and just be a scimitar horned oryx, or just be a Grevy zebra, or just be a greater one horn rhino, which is a really cool opportunity for researchers to come out and see and study some of the behaviors for not necessarily truly wild animals, but animals under human care that are the next step to being truly wild. And our really hands-off approach really has helped a lot of our reintroduction efforts around the world, with animals under human care being kind of those last arcs, if you would, of those species. So a good example of that is our scimitar horned oryx project. So scimitar horned oryx are a beautiful white antelope with this cinnamon colored throat and these super long, very thin horns, and they look just like the scimitar swords from areas of Africa and Asia. And they're beautiful antelope. They went extinct in the wild due to poaching, due to unsustainable use. And so fortunately, there were populations under human care that could be scimitar horned oryx could be bred under human care. And then through with the help of Sahara Conservation Fund and the Environmental Agency of Abu Dhabi, they started a program to bring scimitar horned oryx back to Chad in North Africa. And so 3 of the animals
Amazing.
from the wilds were selected, a breeding bull and 2 females. And what was really cool, we put GPS radio collars on them. And the scimitar horned oryx born at the wilds were some of the first ones to venture out into this massive nature preserve. And they're now grandparents of wild scimitar horned oryx, which is
Oh, I
just
love hearing
really
that.
cool.
Amazing. Oh, that's great. I mean, so I mean, maybe pick up on that. So, part of our plan here at Greenproofing is really, in a world where greenwashing is a major concern, right? And sometimes there's like real greenwashing, and sometimes there's perceived greenwashing. Is how do we greenproof? Like, what are we? What is our thesis of change? What data are we tracking, and then how do we communicate that? Can you maybe speak a little bit about those 3: the thesis of change for the wilds, what you're tracking, and then and maybe some of the verified impacts and how you're sharing that with the world? I mean, maybe it's through the science community, could be with schools or governments or institutions. Like, how do you package up your impact and bring it to the world?
Absolutely. I think one of our biggest ways that we do that is just through all the different tours and offerings that we offer here at the Wilds, which is just the dissemination of the information. But when it comes to our actual impact and our growth, we want to walk the talk, right? So we've got this fantastic recycling program that we have on site. We've got the building that I'm actually in is our Conservation Science Training Center. So it's all geothermal heating and cooling, which is really cool. Just allows us to ensure that we're making sure that we don't have those large carbon footprints and that we're minimizing our impacts as possible. When it comes to monitoring, especially our wildlife, both our native wildlife and our exotic managed wildlife, recording data is paramount. So with our animals under human care, we monitor them every day, even though, they've got several thousand acres to move around. Our job is the well-being of those animals. So making sure that they're in a safe place, that they have all their needs met. So our animal management team is out there in the field, monitoring them, recording data, both for their well-being, but also for research projects. So right now, we've been working with OSU's Imagenomics Lab to do some animal well-being assessments. So using camera traps and drone footage to see how are animals moving around the landscape and how does that impact their well-being, or are we seeing kind of trends or patterns where maybe during this season our animals are hanging out over here? What's laying that groundwork? What is the reason for that? Is it just it's breeding season and the males kind of have everybody broken up across this area, or is it more they're moving for a certain resource or just utilizing the space that they have? And so we're coupling that with brand new GPS solar powered ear tags. So our Pear David's deer herd, which is a really cool species of deer, they look like a donkey and a deer mixed together. They've got this like fly swatter tail, these funky antlers.
Where are they from? Where do you
They're
find
from
these?
China originally, Dave. And what's interesting about Pear David's deer is they're an animal that Western science has never known as truly wild. So by the time that Father Armand David, who the species is named after, first encountered the species in China, it was already extinct in the wild. It was found on the emperor's private deer estate. And so all Pear David's deer under human care and in the wild in China today are descended from only 18 animals that survived on this estate, which is pretty cool to think of. But our herd is over 60 animals, and they have 2,400 acres that they can move around. And so making sure that we can have eyes on all those animals all the time, it can be a challenge. So by having these GPS ear tags, we can see how they utilize and move around the landscape. And we can bring that information back to our partners in China to also put ear tags on their Pear David's deer herds. Now, their herds Pear David's deer, unfortunately, they don't live a truly wild lifestyle. They are in fenced in reserves, even in China,
Sure.
but they're massive reserves. So it's like a wilds over there in China. So it's several thousand acres as well that they can move around. So bringing in that data and allowing researchers to kind of share that information between one another. Another species that we have a pretty large herd of here at the Wilds is Szechuan takin. They're super cool looking animals. I grew up in Florida. They're not a heat tolerant animal. So when I bring family and friends up from Florida, they're like, what is that animal? It is so cool. They look like mismatch between a capybara, a grizzly bear, and a wildebeest, but they're really
Wow.
cool.
That's
They're
a mix.
they are a mix, but they're a goat antelope. They're native to the Himalayas of China, and they've got these very large nasal cavities to allow to not only breathe in that thin mountain air, but also heat it up before it hits their lungs. But really cool animal. And in a traditional zoo setting, oftentimes they're kind of in a goat-like exhibit. So lots of rock work, maybe a small water feature, not a lot of room. And they are super smart, Dave. These are Szechuan takin. If you give them a problem or a
They'll
way
figure it
to
out.
potentially escape, they'll try to figure it out.
Nice.
But because of our accessibility here at the Wilds and having a large herd of Szechuan takin, over 40 individuals, we've actually had researchers from China come out and learn about anesthesia techniques that our vet
Huh.
team uses and how to monitor their behavior over time. And so because of those efforts, they're now bringing that to China in the field, working on Szechuan takin in one of the hardest habitats that you could imagine, the cloud forests of southeastern China, which is just, it's steep terrain, super forested, and trying to follow an animal that could get up to 1,000 pounds through just thick
Wow.
undergrowth. It's pretty impressive.
Well, can you tell me, maybe pull on the thread a little bit more about, in a time of human-driven extinction of major, mammals in particular, I mean, insects, birds, the whole nine yards. What is the role that the wilds play in, genetic biodiversity, like in maintenance or preservation of a species? So why, how does the wilds and the animals that are on the lands relate to China and relate to Africa or otherwise when it comes to the global effort of preserving and protecting the species that are roaming the planet still today?
Absolutely, Dave. So most of our species are a part of this Association of Zoos and Aquarium Species Survival Plan. So every species survival plan has a stud bookkeeper, so somebody who tracks the inheritance and the genetics of that population under human care. Now, the AZA has done a fantastic job with a lot of our bigger flagship species. So animals like white rhinos and cheetahs and
Sure.
giraffes. But some of those other species, especially hoofstock, those large animals that need larger spaces, that need those herd dynamics, a lot of those populations have kind of been phased out of a lot of more traditional small city zoos, just because they need those large spaces. So areas like the wilds, we can hold several different herds. We can house bachelor herds. So keeping those extra males that may not be right for breeding, either because they're too young or too old or might not have the proper genetics lined up. And so we can house those bachelor herds along with our breeding herds. And then working together collaboratively with other large facilities or other zoos to maintain those populations under human care. But also tying in and finding opportunities to then send those genetics back to the wild, right? So opportunities like the Scimitar Horned Oryx project, another species that we work a lot with here at the Wilds. In fact, they were the first species to be released on site are Przewalski's wild horses. So they're another species. They look just like a regular kind of pony-esque horse, but they've got an erect mane like a zebra. They're a very ancient horse species. I always tell guests, if they look like the horses from cave art, you're exactly right. They're thousands of years old. And they're another species like the scimitar horned orcs that went extinct in the wild. And through the efforts of zoos and aquariums, both here in the US, but also across in Europe and Asia, that we created a transatlantic breeding program for Przewalskis. And now there are wild Przewalskis in Mongolia and northern China and Ukraine, thanks to those efforts. So it's a really
Amazing.
cool way of making sure that we've got those genetics. But we're constantly kind of playing matchmaker with different species, making sure that we've got those genetics and that we have animals not just for zoological purposes, but also for the continuation out in the wild and out in nature.
Amazing. As we're moving toward our close, I'm curious, any what I would call alpha or any under the hood news that likely is going to be coming down around new species that are coming to the wilds or new programs, impact programs that you might seed here with our viewers?
Yeah, Dave. So with our the wilds, we're constantly growing, and we do offer tours to see our animals, to go out and see the conservation work that we do on site. We also have lodging options as well, just because we are so remote. We're roughly about an hour and 30-minute drive from Columbus. That's our closest large city. But we've got a brand new RV campground. It is
Cool.
Hellbender themed to celebrate our Hellbenders. So we've got hookup sites as well as primitive camping there. For our giraffe program, we're going to be growing out our giraffe herd and really kind of growing that population. So Maasai giraffe are an endangered species in Africa. Zoos in North America are the only ones that house that species outside of their native range. And so we're hoping to house a larger breeding herd, but then also with that brand new barn that we're going to be building, have a hotel suite that guests can stay in who love giraffes and meet our giraffe herd in the barn. So
Amazing.
some cool things coming down the pipeline there. With education programs, we do outreach and community engagement efforts, all sorts of great summer camp programs for kids. One of my favorite programs that we offer is a career program. So highlighting the different careers that we have here at the Wilds, our ecology team, our operations team, our facilities team members, along with our animal management and conservation medicine teams. That way, seeing how many different teams it takes to run a facility like the Wilds and just letting the kids kind of ask their questions and get to kind of shadow some of the behind the scenes operations day in and day out, which is really cool.
Amazing. Well, congrats on all your work. As we tie out, can you share one thing that brings you hope right now in a world that feels like it's frankly a fair amount of pessimism in our particular space as sustainability professionals? One thing that brings you hope, and then one thing that you're grateful for, and it can be anything, any professional or otherwise. Hope and gratitude. Tie us out.
Yep. Thanks, Dave. I think hope-wise, zoos, they allow especially young people to get connected to nature and see the value of nature. And it's incredible seeing all the different youth that come through our Wilds programs. So whether that's our 8-year-olds in our Junior Explorers camp, getting to see a rhino for the first time, or our teenagers in our Dirty Wilds Jobs camp that get to shoot a dart gun and work alongside our conservation medicine team, or our teen volunteers, our owls that get to help our ecology team plant a brand new meadow. I think that hope with the next generation is so very cool. And I think for gratitude, it's just, I feel so fortunate to work alongside an amazing team that has the goals of restoring our land, restoring our wildlife, and connecting people to those stories of success that we have here at the Wilds, which is so great.
Wonderful. Well, Danny Lough from the Wilds, thank you for your time and all your work in the space. Just inspiring work happening out there in Ohio, and really invite all of our viewers to make a visit. Whether you're in an RV or you're glamping or otherwise, it sounds like you've got options to view some of the majestic species that roam our planet right here in the United States. So thanks again for your time, Danny, and be well.
Thank you, Dave.